Well, welcome to the Debt Matters Podcast, where we help Canadians find solutions to their debt with licensed insolvency trustees from across Canada. I'm Wayne Kay, and I'm excited about today's show because we're going to be diving into the B word. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the best ways to create and stick to a budget. And to find out how, joining me on the phone, I've got John Adamson from Adamson Associates, licensed insolvency trustee in Ontario. John, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
The last time you were on the show, you mentioned right at the end that we were talking about, you said, I wish people would learn about budgeting and money in high school. Oh,
Correct.
So true. It's got to be so frustrating for somebody in your industry where you see the same problems, and it's of nobody's fault. We just don't learn this stuff.
That's true. That's very true. You know, I think most people live payday to payday. And it's a situation where we don't think about the things that we have to pay. Mm-hmm. So we just make decisions, and it's really hard. How do you make decisions if you don't know what you have available to spend? Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the challenges. And by doing a budget and knowing what you've got coming in, knowing what you've got going out, that's the most important part. Then you know what's left over, and now you can make decisions with what you have left over.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be great because actually when somebody does go through bankruptcies or consumer proposals, this is actually something you talk to them about, right?
It is, yes.
And how deep does this go? How do you go about starting that?
Well, you get out of it what you put into it. So there's some people that, it won't matter what I say. They're going to get nothing out of it because they're not interested. And it's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's other people who will say, oh my God, this is so amazing. Why? I wish I had known this 20 years ago. And it really comes down to which frame of mind are you? But it's a tool that we all need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be diving into this budgeting. How do you even start?
I was in university and I said to myself, where's my money going? And I sat down and at the end of a month and thought, I got to do something different. And I wrote down every penny that I spent. And we had pennies back in those days. And if you went for a coffee, you wrote it down. And at the end of the month, I tallied up where my money was going. And I think that's the starting point. You determine where you're spending your money. And you have to be honest with yourself. Where am I spending my money? And then you look at it and say, well, okay, what can I change? I can make some decisions. And that becomes the basis for making your budget. And now you know what income you've got. Everybody knows what they bring in. Everybody knows what their paycheck is. So you know what's coming in. And then you break it down into weeks and you say, okay, what are my expenditures? And you break your expenditures into wants and needs. I need to pay my rent. I need food on the table. Lots of wants. It could be whatever. And you kind of put the wants separately. And then you sort of take care of the necessities first. And then you look at it. And I think it's important. Like, you kind of want to have some money left over for you. So I'm a big believer that in your budget, you should have something in there for you, for savings, whatever. Maybe I'm going to take a trip next year, whatever. But I'm going to put some money aside for that or for a rainy day because the car is going to break down. I'm going to need to pay for car repairs. So you build that into your budget. And then it becomes a plan that you follow. And that's kind of how I go about it.
Mm-hmm. And then you're going along great, and all of a sudden there's those one-time expenses that come up every year that may surprise you. Maybe it's the car insurance, or maybe it's the sewer gas bill, or a tax
the
bill.
Annual license plate. Yeah.
Right.
No, exactly.
Some little thing that comes up. How do you incorporate that into that budgeting?
You really want to try, because it's all about cash flow. So you really want to try if you can get that on some sort of monthly billing. And a lot of the insurance companies now will do that on a monthly billing, and they'll take it right out of your account. Utilities, a lot of times people would have high utility bills in the wintertime, but very little utilities in the summertime. So if you can get them to take extra in the summer months, so your utilities are lower in the winter. So you start to look at each of those and say, how do I make this so it's almost an equal billing so that I don't have that huge bill that comes in whatever month it is. Mm. But you may still have that. I mean, from time to time you have it. But you want to actually build that into your budget. So if I know that, I'm going to have a $1,200 bill 12 months from now, I'm going to build into my budget this month $100 for that, and I'm going to leave money in the account so that when that comes up, or possibly if you have a savings account, transfer it to a savings account, I've got money set aside for it.
It's so important. Once you learn the trick to this, don't you find that people are just a little bit more relaxed?
Yes,
Right?
it is. It's peace of mind. How do you make a decision? Can I afford that car payment or whatever it is, right? Can I afford that if you don't know what you have left over?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've watched even lots of money TV shows. There's always different resources around. And it's shocking how many people have no idea that they have $2,000 coming in every month, but they're spending $2,500. And they're shocked. They have no clue that they're spending that much money.
Yep. But what's amazing about this? And I go back to, if you go back and look at the 80s when people would go to the grocery store and they would have cash and they would buy groceries. And now you go to the grocery store and you buy patio furniture. And you go to every big box store, which is selling stuff, but really they're a credit card company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So what's happened is, these companies are smart. They know how to get people to overspend. And they've created this machine where people overspend. And they know what they're doing. Get our credit card and spend more. You swipe a card, you're not paying attention in the grocery store. Am I spending $300 or $400 sort of? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what they do. And they've engineered it so that people overspend. And having a budget and then sticking to it really protects you from them.
But I got 500 points. I got 500 points if I spent $125 for groceries.
I know, and I got a free cutting board the other day, and I just wish they'd reduce the price of my groceries.
I know, but we're now, that's how we think.
Exactly.
They've done a great job at that. That's very impressive. So that's something we need to all be aware of is, and this happened to us even for, we're at $23. We need $25 because we get a 50-cent coupon. And I'm like, so I spent $2 on something I don't need to save 50 cents.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Comes back to needs and wants.
Yeah, exactly. So what about people that can't balance their budget? What are their options then?
So that's a tough one because it comes back to, it's not just a matter of doing math on a page. Mm-hmm. It comes back to making decisions. And you really only have two choices. You either have to increase the income coming in or you have to decrease the expenditures. And so, what am I getting rid of? And a lot of times that's where we get involved, right? To say, well, do you need this? Okay, is there a cheaper option? Or do I get a part-time job? Do I take on a roommate or whatever? But somehow it has to budget because there's no tree out there with just go out and pluck some money off the tree, right? Mm-hmm. So it's either you have to increase the money coming in or you have to decrease the expenditures, and that's the tough one because it's personal decisions and that you have to make.
Mm-hmm. And these days it's very difficult, and I can see how so many families, you hit a rough patch, all of a sudden you can see how things will go sideways financially. But there's expenses now as families that we have that weren't here 20 years ago. And an example will be the cell phone bills, which are ridiculously expensive when you add in the data plans and then all of a sudden the kids have to have a data plan. And I've done the math on some of these things that we now have to spend money on that we didn't spend it on years ago. And it could be $300 extra. Internet, add that into your home. We never had to worry about that back in the old days. So
correct.
Just like that, there's $300 extra every month on. It's almost essential these days to have cell phones, right?
Yes and no. Okay. So yes and no. I guess it depends on what you do. It's one that I've looked at a lot, and anybody who's got kids, and you're like, okay, well, why does that child need that cell phone or that plan? And I think it's, again, these companies are very good at overselling, and so if you can say, hey, I want to do away with all, Bell did this for a while with, the phone services, right? You say, well, do I need all this stuff? You have to go back to, if it's a phone, what do I use it for? And do I really need all that?
Yeah.
Right? Do I need to have all this roaming stuff on there? If I can go somewhere that has Wi-Fi, and there's lots of places that have free Wi-Fi now, am I okay with not having these services?
Mm-hmm. I just absolutely refuse. Personally, I've got my phone and I can text, and then I use Wi-Fi, and I've got pretty much the cheapest phone anywhere. And I laugh at my kids because they've got the latest. They're older, They pay for their own, but I'm like, the amount of money you're spending extra on that, and we do the same things, just you can do it while sitting on a park bench. But, I guess that comes down to want needs, as you said.
Want and needs.
And they work. So they're lucky. They're doing good. Let's talk about the best ways to save for retirement. I wish I'd thought that through earlier when you talk about learning back in high school.
Part of that depends on what age you're coming into this. But I remember I had a teacher in high school, and he said to me, if you just put 10% of every paycheck away, you'll retire, very, very wealthy. And I wish I'd listened to him. Yeah. But it's true, right? So it comes back to your budget, and it comes back to wants and needs. and that is a want. I want to be able to retire with money. It's a need. I need to retire. That day's going to come for everybody. But how much do I want to have? A few options that I think make a lot of sense. Because most people don't have pensions anymore. But if you can put money into an RRSP, and then at the end of the year, you get a tax refund. Take that tax refund and put it into your tax-free savings account, because all the money that's earned in your tax-free savings account, they're not going to tax. And so you're building up money. When you take it out eventually, it's tax-free. And you've created those refunds from putting money into your RRSP, which is for your retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way of doing it. How do you budget? I guess just start small. What's your advice to people when it comes to that budgeting?
It's planning, right? So you're looking at what you've got, your resources, and you're saying, these are things that I want to do. I want to put money into an RRSP, right? Or whatever it is. I want to go on a trip next year. So I'm not going to just run out tomorrow and, finance that trip. I'm going to plan for it. I have the money saved up. So that all comes back to the budget is the plan, and it's all written down. There's an old saying that if you write your goals down, it happens. So you've got it written down, and then you go back and you track, how did I do this month? Did I spend X number of dollars on groceries, or did I spend whatever? And there's an old saying. There's a lot of people that maybe didn't make a lot of money, but they were very wealthy when they retired, and it's what they didn't spend. And I think we've become a culture, and there's a generational thing there where it's all about spending. But there's a lot of people that had a lot of money by not, they accumulated a lot of money by not spending.
Yeah. That's great advice. And you can make a game out of it. And once you start seeing that grow, you start seeing that little savings account, that money in that RRSP start to grow, you start to want to put more in if you possibly can.
Yes, absolutely. That happens.
Right. And my favorite thing, and this drives my wife crazy, but I get playing with those compound interest calculators. You can grab them online, and I'll say, at just 6%, this is what it will be, compounded interest. And, maybe we should get this when we have grandkids one day. Maybe we can put this in, and have it grow at 5%. And then I have it grow for like 80 years. And I'm always laughing about the amount of money compound interest can actually grow into.
But it's true. It's true. The proof of that is the mortgage companies aren't suffering, are they?
Yeah, very true. Yeah, exactly. Is there a best way to track your expenses?
You know what? I think everybody's different. There's some people who use envelopes, and that works for them, and they put the money in their envelope, and when their envelope's gone, that's, they've tracked it that way. There's other people that are, computer savvy and have programs that they use. There's other people that would just have some sort of manual book that they would write it down. I don't think it necessarily matters as long as you do it.
Yeah.
Right. The key is to make sure that you do it.
Right. And one more question before I let you go. Is it important to have both checking and savings accounts?
I believe so. If you can put money into a savings account and forget that it's there until you decide to invest it, that's great. Because now you've got money. That's, that can become your rainy day fund. Maybe, you're going to save up 3 months worth of pays for that rainy day or whatever you choose. Mm-hmm. But quite often, if it's in the checking account, you'll spend it.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of, And you're right. Back to your comment about it becomes a game. Well, that money's in there. I don't want to touch it, right? So you segregate it so you don't touch it.
Mm-hmm. Any final words of advice you want to share regarding budgeting?
Do it. Just do it. Make it part of the goal. And if you do it, you'll be amazed. You really will. It's just part of getting to where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm. John, thanks very much for being on the show today. This has been great information.
I appreciate being on. Thank you.
You got it. That's John Adamson from Adamson Associates, licensed insolvency trustee in Ontario. And if you want to contact John or the team, you can contact adamsontrustee.com. That's the website. And that is it for today's Debt Matters podcast. Just make sure you subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. And of course, if you want more information, you can always check out debtmatters.ca. Thanks very much for listening.